Yo yo, what's up guys? I'm here today doing a Season 17 weapon tier list video. So let's just begin I suppose. So starting off we have the care package weapons. This is just a given. Care package weapons, basically the best in the game. Kind of just uncontested other than the hemlock to an extent, but this weapon is still very strong. It's just that people don't like to pick it up for some reason. And then of course, immediately after, there's the Nemesis and the R99. Everyone's saying these weapons are the best at the moment. It's just a fact, pretty much. R99 has insane DPS, and there's not much you can say else about that. It's just a crazy weapon, and the Nemesis is just broken. This tiny nerf it got recently has just done nothing. It's basically unnoticeable. Good at pretty much any range. Insane DPS once charged up, and you can't really contest it. And no ammo problems because energy is just such a common ammo type at the moment. There's not much to say about the S tier weapons. I think everyone knows all these weapons are up here. Just not much to say at all. And for A tier, we have the Prowler. The Prowler is a really strong weapon. The only issue I feel like I can see with this is it's somewhat hard to use on mouse and keyboard, and like at least compared to controller. And then the only other problem I feel like is the ammo type. There's not much people running heavy at the moment, at least in, you know, like pubs and ranked. I think in competitive games it's not as much of an issue, but still a bit of an issue. And I don't know, still a very strong weapon. SMGs at the moment are just insane. If you're not using an SMG, then you're probably going to die to someone who is using one. And after the Prowler we have the car. Pretty much same stuff as the R9, just slightly worse, and does not have a laser sight, which isn't really a problem to an extent. You can swap the ammo types, of course, which kind of makes up for the whole ammo issue. So you can run it pretty much anytime you want, and also it's on ground at the moment, unlike the R99, which makes it a bit more accessible. Up next is the charge rifle. The charge rifle is also an extremely strong gun, just that nobody wants to use it in ranked and such because it's cringe. But in terms of a competitive environment, this weapon's still super strong, really oppressive at long range and easy to farm up your Evo shields. The nerfs it got, the biggest impact it had was the rarity of the weapon. The weapon is just a lot more rare, but honestly having one less shot is noticeable, but if you're hitting your shots on point it barely matters. Since of course the weapon is still the weapon, just has slightly less ammo. So yeah. I think that's all for A tier. So B tier, starting off, I think I'd say I'd put the 3030 here. 3030 is a very underrated weapon, very good at poking repeatedly at long range using heavy ammo, so still, as I said before, kind of an annoying ammo type to find to an extent, but it's still not using loads because it's a marksman weapon, so you can just poke for free. Has a fast reload time, good damage, takes a skull piercer, charges up, you can just do loads of damage. And sometimes you can do stuff with it close range. Of course, that's not reliable, but you know, if you don't have ammo in your secondary, it's still an option, I suppose. And fitting with the marksman thing, I think I will put the G7 in B as well. You could argue this weapon's a bit worse, but the G7 is still, you know, it's pretty usable, decent at, you know, mid to long range. Of course it falls off at closer range, but that's what your SMG is for. Light ammo, so it's an accessible ammo type, you can always get more. Coming up next, I'd put the Flatline in B tier. I mean, this weapon's still got decent DPS, it's very usable close range and has a pretty large mag size, which gives it a decent edge over the other rifles below the Flatline. Of course the issue is the ammo type, and you know, sometimes it can be a bit of a pain to use without a sight, but kind of depends on the skin you have, of course, and I feel like this is a weapon you got to use like a decent bit to be fully comfortable with it at long ranges, but overall this weapon's still pretty decent. You can definitely use it, but at the moment you might want to pick something else up instead of it. And then I think to round off B tier, I'd put the Wingman here. The Wingman is, I'd say it's a little bit underrated at the moment, but the only issue is the ammo type to an extent, which is a common theme for some of these weapons. but the strafe speed is still obnoxious, and it's got good damage. You just gotta hit your shots And if you have a good strafe, anyone using an SMG could just completely mess up their spray. Okay, so for C tier, starting off, I'll put the Havoc here. The Havoc is kind of been slowly nerfed piece by piece over, I guess, the seasons. I don't even know how long it's been. Because I remember they nerfed the damage with the turbocharger by 1, which honestly, it feels like it hurt the weapon a decent amount. But then they also nerfed the hipfire, which really hurt this weapon. Because I used to be able to use this weapon a lot at closer ranges, but now it just feels horrible to use, and it just feels like RNG to an extent. I hope this weapon gets better soon, but it has a really good like mag size and damage for the mag size and everything, similar to the flatline, but the damage and usability is kind of like, it's kind of just what kills this weapon a lot, and then the hipfire not being as good just makes it not as worth. But I think this weapon is still, you know, it's quite usable, but there's no reason to use this gun over the Nemesis either. So it just kind of kills this weapon to an extent. And after this, there's the Peacekeeper. This weapon has just not really fit the times. It's been just not changed well enough to fit the SMG meta we're currently in. The only reason I feel like you should be using this weapon is if you're playing a character that benefits from it, such as, you know, Gibby, Newcastle, Maggie, someone like that, but there's just not much reason to use this right now. And you're probably going to die to someone using an SMG. Unless you have a character that will, you know, make you excel at using this weapon. I'd say directly after this is the Eva. These weapons aren't, this tier list isn't like in order or anything, so, you know, interchangeable and all. But Eva 8 has, honestly, it's getting a little bit of an upraising recently. People are realizing this weapon's pretty good, especially with the recent buff to the fire rate when you don't have a bolt, and I think it's a white one as well. It makes the weapon feel a lot better now, and if you get hit like a lot of shots, it's honestly really damaging. I feel like just a few more buffs and this weapon might, you know, it might make a big splash. And after this, I'm going to put the Rampage here. Nobody's using this weapon at the moment. I don't think I've seen this weapon, like, at all, honestly, in this season, since they put it in the crafter. I mean, it's still a decent weapon, but the only issue I'm seeing is that you're probably going to be dying or getting destroyed by people using marksman weapons and the SMGs. Nobody's really using rifles and stuff, so there's nothing you can really like out-challenge here. Although, of course, there's just no reason to craft it, honestly. It just doesn't need to be crafted whatsoever, because other weapons do the same job pretty much better. Alright, so after this, I'm going to put the Volt in C tier. I honestly think this weapon is kind of overrated. There's not much reason to use this either, because Nemesis exists and you can just run an SMG with it as well. It kind of fits a similar niche to the R301, as in very usable, and it just doesn't take any skill to use, but it's kind of just not excelling at anything at the moment. Yeah, the hipfire honestly is really lacking for an SMG. You need a laser sight on this thing, otherwise it just feels super unreliable. And of course, since it's energy, as I said previously, you can just run a Nemesis over it, honestly. Okay, so to round out the C tier, I'm gonna put the longbow here. The longbow is just, it's a bit of a weird weapon, you know. You never really see much people using it other than people that just sit on top of buildings and camping and stuff. And they usually miss all their shots, so they suck. But I mean, this weapon's still decent, but nobody's really using sniper ammo other than for the wingman or the charge rifle. And it's kind of easy to, you know, use up all your ammo and you can't really get a refill. You kind of need the attachments, so, you know, sniper mag, you need a scope usually, you need the skull piercer sometimes, you know. Otherwise, you're kind of just going to get out damaged by everyone, or you're taking too long to get all your shots out and all this. This weapon probably needs a small buff to be, you know, really good again. Hey, so the rest of the tier list will be shown in my next upcoming video right after this one, which will be released in a few days. So apologies for the abrupt ending too, but I had a small issue with that. So alright, I will see you next time. Bye bye.
Sorry that I move slow, frozen so it drip slow. 10 toes down with the Uzi on the pavement. See the money, grab that money, cut the shit, case closed. Zeros with the commas in the bank, I want this close. G to the B to the